All right, get ready. This is one of those videos that's going to stretch your brain a little bit. I would follow along on your worksheet, and I would pause the video whenever you need to really think about something. We're going to talk about perpendicular slopes. And so we're going to take segments like this segment called A and this other segment called B, and they're perpendicular. They meet at a 90-degree angle, and I want to show that their slopes will always be negative reciprocals. That is, the slope of A will equal -1 divided by the slope of B every single time, because the reciprocal of B is 1 divided by B, or the slope of B, and it's negative. So negative reciprocals. And so the way that we can do this, because this is supposed to represent x equals 1, that means that the coordinates of B, the x-coordinate is 1, because this is x equals 1, and the y-coordinate of B is the slope of segment A. If you rise the slope of A and then run 1, that means the y-coordinate is the slope of A. And I can do the same thing down here for point A. It's 1, and then the rise is the slope of B. Okay? So now I've got these 2 points defined using the slope of A and the slope of B. Because the x-coordinate is 1, the y-coordinate is just the slope of the line segment. Now in your worksheet, or that you can see, it says you're supposed to use the distance formula to calculate the distance of A, B, and C. And the distance formula, as I think you now know, says that a distance, like the length of segment A, is equal to the square root of the difference between the x's. So that would be 1 minus 0 squared plus the difference of the y's. So that would be the MA, slope of A, minus 0 squared. Or let me just simplify that. It's the square root of 1 squared plus the slope of A squared. This square root does not undo these squared things, okay? So now that's the distance that represents the length of segment A. And I'll just kind of, segment B is the same thing, right? Because it's at 1, we're going from 0, 0 to 1, slope B. So the distance for B is the square root of 1 squared plus the slope of segment B squared. Same exact thing, because you're subtracting 0 each time. So we can use that to represent the length of segment B. Oops. Now segment C is a little different. It's actually a vertical line. It's just, it doesn't move left or right. But you could still represent it using the distance formula. It's the square root of the x minus the x squared, so that's 1 minus 1 squared, plus the y, so the slope of A, minus the slope of B squared. Now this is 0, so that's kind of gone. So it's actually the square root of MA minus MB squared. C equals the square root of slope of A minus the slope of B squared. So they all have square root symbols because they're distance formula. But now I know, because this is a right angle, okay, that means that I can use the Pythagorean theorem, and that's what the last part of this worksheet's all about. It says that if A squared plus B squared equals C squared, that I can substitute in each of these 3 expressions for A, B, and C. So I can say the square root of 1 plus the slope of A squared plus the square root of 1 plus the slope of B squared equals the square root of, and this is where it gets really tricky, the slope of A minus the slope of B squared. Right? I've done A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And the cool thing is that, and this is tricky, but these squareds, they cancel out the square root, right? So this squared cancels out this square root. I get 1 plus the slope of A squared. And then plus this squared cancels out the square root. Plus 1 plus the slope of B squared. And that equals the slope of A minus the slope of B squared, because this cancels out that square root. Now the real trick is this is where it gets super tricky. I have to FOIL this out. That's the slope of A minus the slope of B times the slope of A minus the slope of B. You ready? First, slope of A times slope of A. That's the slope of A squared. Outside. Slope of A times minus the slope of B, or slope of A times negative slope of B, right? Inside. Negative slope of B times slope of A. So slope of A, slope B. And then finally last, negative slope B times negative slope B, which is positive slope of b squared. and then I can combine these two like terms. So I get the slope of a squared minus 2 times the slope of a times the slope of b plus the slope of b squared. Okay, that's kind of familiar, hopefully. And then over here, I'm going to also combine like terms. 1 plus 1 is 2. So I have 2 plus the slope of a squared plus the slope of b squared. Now check it out. The slope of a squared cancels out on either side. You can subtract it from either side. The slope of b squared cancels out on either side. You can subtract it on either side. So I have 2 equals negative 2 times the slope of a times the slope of b. Let me get the slope of a by itself. I'll divide everything by negative 2 and the slope of b. And you simplify the 2's, and what do you get? Negative 1 divided by the slope of b equals the slope of a. Don't worry, you're not going to get tested on that, but now you should have put it in your notebook, and you know that the slope of a line is always the negative reciprocal of the slope of its perpendicular line. Now watch the other video and do the assignment.